You're just an old man clinging to paperwork that doesn't matter anymore. That's what my son-in-law Jason told me at my own dinner table. His words hit me harder than any punch could. My daughter, Emily, didn't even flinch. She just sipped her wine and let him humiliate me in front of the whole family. In that moment, I felt 35 years of sweat, sacrifice, and back-breaking labor dissolve into nothing, at least in their eyes. Before I continue, if you're new, here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Richard Callahan, though most folks in Bloomington, Indiana, just call me Rick. I wasn't born with money. I earned it the hard way, running a small construction company, swinging hammers before I could afford to hire men to swing them for me. Summers were hot. Winters froze our bones, but we built homes that still stand today. I wasn't flashy. No yachts, no vacations in Europe. Just steady work, long nights of paperwork, and enough grit to put food on the table for my wife, Mary, and our only daughter, Emily. When Mary passed 10 years ago, cancer eating her alive from the inside, I swore to protect Emily with everything I had left, and I did. Paid her college tuition in full, helped her buy her first car, co-signed her first house mortgage when she married Jason, the boy I never trusted. He came from a smoother background, the kind where men wore shiny watches but had soft hands. He smiled too much, laughed too loud, and never once asked me about my work, just about my money. Still, Emily loved him, and for her, I bit my tongue. But sitting at that dinner table, watching him smirk across from me, I knew something was wrong. "You still keep all those old files locked away, don't you?" Jason said, cutting into his steak like it was already his. "Deeds, contracts, company papers. You know, Rick, you should really let us take a look at them. Might save us all some time in the future." Emily giggled. "Jason, don't tease him." But it wasn't a joke. His eyes told me that. He wanted something buried in the files I kept in the old cedar cabinet in my den. I tried to brush it off. "Paperwork matters when you've built something worth protecting," I said, my voice low but steady. Jason leaned back, grinning. "Or when you're too stubborn to admit the world's moved on." The room went quiet. My grandson, little Tommy, looked up from his mashed potatoes, sensing the tension even at 6 years old. That night, after they left, I sat in my den staring at that cedar cabinet. Inside were 35 years of business records, company ownership documents, deeds to properties I'd invested in, and the mortgage papers I'd helped Emily and Jason secure. I locked the cabinet, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and wondered, why was Jason so interested? The next morning, I got my answer. I stopped by First National Bank, where an old friend of mine, Howard, still worked as a loan officer. Howard pulled me aside, his brow furrowed. "Rick, did you authorize Jason to access your company account?" My stomach dropped. "What?" Howard shook his head. "He came in yesterday with some paperwork. Said you were retiring and passing everything to him, but the signatures looked off. I stalled him, but he'll be back." My blood went cold. Jason wasn't just mocking me. He was making a move, trying to strip away everything I had built, using my own daughter's trust as cover. I left the bank trembling, anger simmering beneath my skin. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of betrayal not from a stranger, but from family. That night, Emily called me. "Dad," she said softly, "Jason thinks maybe it's time you let go of the business. You've worked so hard for so long. Don't you think you deserve some rest?" Rest? That word cut deep. Mary used to tell me I'd rest when the good Lord took me. Not before. I didn't answer right away. I just listened to the silence on the other end. The silence of my own daughter choosing her husband's ambition over her father's legacy. "Emily," I finally said, my voice cracking, "do you even know what he's planning?" She hesitated. Too long, and that's when I knew. She was in on it. I set the phone down gently, though every fiber of me wanted to slam it against the wall. They thought I was old, weak, done. But they had no idea what I still had locked away in that cedar cabinet. No idea how carefully I had prepared for moments just like this, in case the world, or even my own blood, turned against me. I poured another bourbon, sat back in my recliner, and stared at the cabinet like it was a weapon waiting to be drawn. Jason thought he could steal my life's work, but he was about to learn. I wasn't finished fighting. "Dad, you've had your turn. It's our time now." That's what Emily told me the next weekend, standing in my kitchen like she owned the place. Jason leaned against the counter with that smug grin plastered across his face, arms folded, as if my home was already his. I had invited them over because I wanted to clear the air. Instead, they came prepared, like wolves cornering their prey. "Your time?" I repeated slowly, letting the words roll in my mouth. "Emily, this isn't about time. This is about respect." Jason chuckled, low and cold. "Respect? Come on, Rick. You've worked yourself into the ground for decades. But let's be honest. You don't have the energy to run things anymore. You should be thanking us for stepping up." Emily touched his arm. "Jason's right. You could finally relax. Travel. Play golf. Don't you want that?" Her words twisted like a knife. Travel? Golf? They knew me better than that. I was a builder, not a retiree sipping margaritas on some beach. My joy was in creating, in knowing the things I built would outlast me. But the worst part? My own daughter's voice carried not love, but pity, as if I were already half buried. After they left, the house felt colder than ever. Mary's photo on the mantel seemed to look right through me, as if asking why I was letting them get away with this. That night, I called my old lawyer, Frank Delaney, a man I'd trusted since the early days of my business. Frank was from the old school, gray hair, thick glasses, and a handshake that still meant something. "Rick," he said, after I explained the situation, "Jason can't touch a thing without your signature. But if he's forging papers, that's fraud. We'll need evidence." Evidence. The word stuck in my head. I went straight to the cedar cabinet and pulled out the files. Every deed, every contract, every mortgage, my life's story in ink. I spread them across the table, the smell of old paper filling the room. I realized then that Jason wasn't just greedy. He was clever. He knew Emily trusted him blindly, and he knew the world saw me as an old man. He thought no one would believe me if I accused him of fraud. And maybe he was right. The following week, things escalated. Emily invited me to dinner at their house. I went, thinking maybe there was still a chance to reach her heart. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew I'd been set up. Their friends were there, well-dressed, couples, sipping wine, laughing at stories Jason told, stories about me. "And Rick still keeps every receipt from the 80s like they're treasures," Jason said, raising his glass. "The poor guy just can't let go." Laughter erupted. Emily smiled weakly, but didn't stop him. "Dad," she said, turning to me with a rehearsed look of concern, We just want what's best for you. Maybe you should think about transferring the business. Jason can handle it now. My jaw tightened. Handle it? He's never worked a day in his life with a hammer in hand. Jason smirked. That's the point, Rick. Times have changed. Nobody needs hammers anymore. It's about leverage, deals, investors. You wouldn't understand. The table chuckled again, and for the first time in my life, I felt like an intruder in my daughter's home. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. Anger wouldn't win this fight. Proof would. I excused myself early, their laughter following me out the door like hounds nipping at my heels. Back home, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I kept replaying Jason's words in my head. You wouldn't understand. He underestimated me. The next morning, I drove down to the county clerk's office. The smell of paper and ink, the squeak of old floors, it all reminded me of the dozens of times I'd been there over the years, filing deeds, closing deals. I asked the clerk, a young guy named Brandon, to pull up any recent filings under my company's name. What I saw made my stomach twist. 2 weeks earlier, Jason had submitted documents attempting to transfer ownership of one of my investment properties into his name. The signature at the bottom? Mine. Or at least, it looked like mine. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles whitened. This is forgery, I said. Brandon frowned. Mr. Callahan, I'm sorry, but it's already under review. If you want to contest it, you'll need legal counsel. Legal counsel I had. Frank. But Jason was moving faster than I thought. He wasn't waiting for me to die. He was trying to bury me alive. That night, Emily called again. Her tone was softer, almost rehearsed. Dad, Jason told me, you've been making things difficult at the bank. Why are you fighting this? Don't you trust me? Trust. The word stung. I had trusted her with everything, her education, her future, her happiness. And now she was asking me to trust the man dismantling my life piece by piece. I trust you, Emily, I said, my voice heavy, but I don't trust him. And one day, you'll see why. There was silence. Then the line went dead. I set the phone down and stared again at the cedar cabinet. Only this time, I didn't see paper. I saw ammunition. Jason thought he was clever, but he'd just made the worst mistake of his life. He underestimated an old builder who still knew how to lay foundations, and I was about to lay one that would bury him. I sat in Frank Delaney's law office the next morning, the faint smell of coffee and old leather filling the air. His shelves were lined with thick law books, and his desk was stacked with files that looked older than Jason himself. Frank adjusted his glasses, peered over the forged document I had brought, and whistled low. This isn't just sloppy, he muttered. It's criminal. Whoever forged this was arrogant. They thought nobody would check. I leaned forward. Jason thought he could outsmart me. He's been mocking me in front of Emily, telling her I'm too old, that I should step aside. But Frank, he's trying to steal everything I built. Frank tapped the paper with his pen. Well, he's about to learn something. The law doesn't take kindly to thieves in suits. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. But this wasn't just about paperwork. Jason had Emily wrapped around his finger, and she wouldn't believe me if I just accused him outright. No, if I wanted justice, I had to let Jason walk right into his own trap. That night, I dug deeper into my cabinet. Among the deeds and contracts was a little file I hadn't touched in years. A trust fund Mary and I had set up when Emily was born. She didn't know about it. Jason definitely didn't. And in that trust, written in black and white, was a clause. If Emily or any spouse attempted to commit fraud or theft against me, all future inheritance would be forfeited. Mary had insisted on it. Just in case, she'd said, back when Emily was only 5, and Jason was still years away from existing in our lives. God bless her. She had seen what I couldn't. I held the document in my hands, my chest tightening. This wasn't just my fight. It was Mary's, too. The next day, I paid a quiet visit to Howard at First National Bank. "Howard," I said, sliding him the trust document, "I need this placed on record, and I want you to flag any transaction Jason attempts under my name. Nothing goes through without my personal approval." Howard scanned the document, eyebrows rising. "Rick, this is ironclad. If Jason so much as breathes wrong on your assets, the courts will have a field day." "Good," I said, my jaw set. "Because I want him to think he's winning." Howard gave me a long look. "You're setting a trap, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. A week later, Jason showed up at my door. He didn't knock politely. He barged in like he owned the place. Emily followed behind, looking torn, her arms folded tight across her chest. Jason tossed a folder onto my table. "Rick, it's time. Sign these papers. Transfer the business. Stop dragging this out." I picked up the folder, flipping through the pages. Blank spaces, shady clauses, promises of joint ownership. It was a snake's contract if I'd ever seen one. Emily's voice was shaky. "Dad, please, it'll be easier for everyone if you just let go." I looked her straight in the eye. "Easier for who, Emily? For me or for him?" Jason slammed, his hand on the table. "For all of us. You think you're some hero, Rick? You're just an old man sitting on dead weight. I'm the future of this family. I'm the one who can turn your scraps into something big." I stayed calm. Too calm, maybe. "Jason, if you want this signed, bring it to my lawyer, Frank Delaney. If it's as legitimate as you claim, there won't be a problem." His face twitched. For just a second, the mask slipped. He hadn't expected resistance. Emily tugged at his arm. "Jason, let's just go." They stormed out, but not before Jason leaned close and whispered, "You'll regret this, old man." I watched them leave, my pulse steady. He thought he had me cornered. He had no idea the walls were already closing in. On him. 2 nights. Later, Frank called. "Rick, you were right. Jason's been shopping your company around to investors in Indianapolis. He's been presenting himself as the new owner. But here's the kicker. He used forged documents in 2 of those meetings. I've got affidavits from people who saw them." My grip on the phone tightened. "So we've got him." "Oh, we've more than got him," Frank said. "We can take this to court. But Rick, I think we should wait. Let him dig deeper. The more rope he takes, the easier it'll be when the judge pulls it." I hung up, a strange calm washing over me. Jason thought he was the builder of a new empire, but all he was really doing was stacking cards on a shaky table. And I was ready to knock it down. That weekend, Emily invited me again, this time to a Sunday dinner with Jason's parents. I almost said no, but then I realized this was exactly where the cracks would start to show. When I arrived, the house was full of laughter, the smell of pot roast in the air. Jason's father, a tall man with a booming voice, clapped me on the back. "Rick, good to see you. Jason's been telling us all about the business transition." "Exciting stuff." I froze for half a second, then smiled politely. "Transition? That's news to me." The table fell quiet. Jason's face flushed red. Emily's fork clattered against her plate. "What do you mean?" his mother asked, glancing at Jason. I leaned back, savoring the moment. "I mean, I haven't signed a single thing. And unless my memory's failing, the business is still mine." Jason's jaw clenched, his eyes darting to Emily, then back to me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in him. And that was when I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and old dust, the kind that clung to your clothes long after you left. Sunlight streamed in through tall windows, catching the nervous sweat on Jason's forehead. Emily sat beside him, her hands clenched in her lap, eyes darting toward me and then away. This was it. The moment all the whispers, the forged signatures, the humiliations at family dinners had led to. Judge Whitaker, a stern man with a voice that could silence a crowd, peered over his glasses. "We are here to address allegations of fraud, forgery, and attempted theft concerning the Callahan Construction Company and related assets." Jason shifted in his seat, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His lawyer leaned in, whispering, "Something quick." I stayed calm, hands folded neatly on the table. 35 years of building homes had taught me patience. Walls don't rise in a day, but they fall in seconds. Frank Delaney stood first, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Richard Callahan, has dedicated his life to his company and to providing for his family. Recently, his son-in-law, Jason Carter, attempted to present fraudulent documents claiming ownership of Mr. Callahan's business and properties. We have evidence, signatures that do not match, affidavits from investors who were misled, and, most importantly, the original. Deeds and trust agreements." He held up a thick folder. Jason's face paled. Jason's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! These claims are exaggerated. My client was acting with the understanding that Mr. Callahan was preparing to retire. Any paperwork was a misunderstanding, not malicious intent." "Then why," Frank shot back, "did Mr. Carter attempt to transfer property deeds into his own name without Mr. Callahan's knowledge or signature?" The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you have proof of this?" Frank smiled. "Yes, Your Honor. We submitted certified copies this morning, and I would also like to introduce this." He pulled out the trust document Mary and I had signed decades ago. This clause explicitly states that if Emily Callahan or her spouse attempts to commit fraud against Mr. Callahan, all rights to inheritance and financial support are immediately void. The courtroom stirred. Emily's face drained of color. Jason shot her a furious look, whispering harshly, but she just stared at the paper, frozen. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor," I began, "I may not have shiny suits or fancy words like Jason, but I built my life with my hands. Every dollar I earned came from sweat, not schemes. When my wife and I set up that trust for our daughter, it wasn't because we didn't love her. It was because we knew the world is full of men like Jason, men who smile at you while they steal from you." I turned my gaze on him. He shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't come here to fight with my daughter," I said, softer now. "I came here to protect what's right. My wife's memory, my company, my name. Jason tried to take those from me, and he tried to use my daughter to do it." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling in her eyes. The judge leaned back, silent, for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Mr. Carter, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Forgery is a serious offense. Attempting to defraud your father-in-law out of his company and properties is not just immoral, it is criminal. This court rules in favor of Mr. Callahan. Ownership of all assets remains with him. Furthermore, given the terms of the trust, your wife, Mrs. Emily Carter, is hereby disinherited. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Emily's tears spilled over as she buried her face in her hands. Jason slammed his fist on the table. "This is ridiculous! He set me up!" The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Enough. You're lucky. Criminal charges aren't being pursued today. Case closed." The sound of that gavel was sweeter than any applause. As we filed out, Jason turned on me, his face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, old man. Emily and I don't need you. We'll build our own life." But his voice cracked at the edges. He knew the truth. Without my money, without my name, he had nothing. Emily lingered behind, eyes red. She whispered, "Dad, I didn't know it would go this far." I looked at her for a long time, my chest heavy. "You chose him over me, Emily. And this," I gestured to the courthouse behind us, "is the price." She broke down, but I turned away. My heart ached, but there was relief too. Justice had been served. Jason had mocked me, tried to strip me of my dignity, my legacy. But now, stripped bare in front of the law, it was his turn to feel small. And I wasn't finished yet. Because while Jason had lost in court, I had one final card to play. One last move that would make sure he never dared to cross me, or anyone else, again. The weeks after the courtroom showdown felt strangely quiet. No late-night calls from Emily, no smug visits from Jason, no more laughter at my expense around dinner tables. For the first time in years, my house was still. I should have felt lonely. Instead, I felt something I hadn't in a long while. Peace. But justice wasn't finished yet. Jason thought losing the case meant he could just lick his wounds and move on. What he didn't realize was that the verdict had triggered a chain reaction he couldn't stop. A few days later, Howard from the bank called me. "Rick, you'll want to hear this," he said, his voice carrying a trace of satisfaction. "Word's out about the court ruling. Jason's credit accounts? Frozen. His investors? Pulling out. And that mortgage you co-signed years back for Emily and Jason's house? Since the inheritance clause voided your financial obligation, the bank is calling it in. Without your backing, they're sunk." I closed my eyes, letting the words sink in. The house I had helped them get, the roof over their heads, was now slipping away because of Jason's greed. Poetic justice. That weekend, I drove past their neighborhood. Jason was out front, pacing the driveway while movers carried furniture out the door. Emily sat on the porch steps, her face pale and drawn, watching her world collapse. Jason spotted me. His face turned crimson. "This is your fault, old man," he shouted across the yard. "You ruined us." I rolled down my truck window, keeping my voice steady. "No, Jason. You ruined yourself. I just stopped you from ruining me, too." His fists clenched, but there was nothing he could do. The bank had taken the house, the investors had vanished, and his reputation in town was nothing but ash. For the first time, Jason had no smirk, only fear. Emily walked toward me, tears in her eyes. "Dad, I don't know what to say. I thought he was doing all this for us, for our future. I didn't realize." Her voice cracked. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But the memory of her silence at those dinners, the way she'd let Jason mock me without a word, it still cut too deep. "Emily," I said softly, I raised you to know right from wrong. One day, you'll have to answer to yourself for the choices you made." Her tears spilled over, but I put the truck in gear and drove away. My heart ached, but it was a clean ache, like a bone finally healing after being broken too long. That night, I poured myself a bourbon and sat in the den, the cedar cabinet standing tall beside me. I ran my fingers over the wood, the same way I had done on the night Jason first mocked me. Only this time, I didn't see it as a weapon. I saw it as a vault of my life's work. Protected, untouchable, mine. I lifted Mary's photo from the mantel, her smile frozen in time. "You were right," I whispered. "That trust you insisted on, it saved everything. You saved me." And, for the first time in years, I felt like I'd finally kept my promise to her, to protect what we built, to guard our daughter, even if it meant guarding her from herself. Word spread quickly in Bloomington. Jason Carter, the slick-talking son-in-law, had been exposed in court, stripped of his schemes, his house repossessed. Folks at the diner whispered his name like a cautionary tale. "Don't pull a Jason," they said when someone got too ambitious. And me? I was no longer the old man to be pitied or mocked. I was the builder who had outlasted the storm. One evening at the local diner, a younger man asked to shake my hand. "Mr. Callahan," he said, "I heard what happened. My dad says you taught everyone in this town a lesson, that you don't mess with a man's legacy." I smiled, shaking his hand firmly. "Son, your legacy is the only thing that lasts. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does." Jason and Emily moved away not long after, tail between their legs. Last I heard, Jason was bouncing. Between odd jobs, his fancy watch pawned, his ego crushed. Emily never called again. And though a part of me will always miss my daughter, I know this much. Sometimes love means letting someone feel the consequences of their choices. I didn't just protect my company. I protected my dignity, my peace. Jason mocked me once, saying I was just an old man clinging to paperwork. Now those papers were the very chains that bound him, and the shield that set me free. So here I sit, glass in hand, the hum of the cicadas outside, the smell of old wood and bourbon in the air. My story isn't one of defeat. It's one of survival. And if you're watching this, I want you to remember, never let anyone, family or not, convince you that your worth is gone just because you've grown older. Sometimes, the oldest foundations are the strongest. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.